one of the things I'm trying to work out in my mind right now is to do with the extent we're able to think in abstract terms. I guess I'm pursuing that or I'm coming at that from two different directions, which at the moment are kind of internally inconsistent, so I need to figure out how these things go together. On the one hand, I'm reading and understanding that cognition can operate with abstractions, so we can think in terms of something like the abstractive operator that Newberg and de Clee talk about, this ability we have to reduce experience to certain abstract qualities and judge subsequent experience in the light of those abstract qualities. So I can see this tree, and I know it's a tree, not because it looks anything like any other tree I've seen in detail, because it has some of the abstract qualities of trees. It has, a large vertical trunk and then kind of side members and then leaves. So I can certainly recognize abstract figures when I see them. I think you also find that in something like the fuzzy trace that Rayner and Brainerd, I think it is, talk about, which are kind of learnt patterns of experience that we can apply, not in detail but in abstract terms. So the fact that I learned to drive a car doesn't mean that I'm now locked into driving down the same streets that I learned on. I can apply those skills to multiple different circumstances because I have the gist of that, as they sometimes refer to it, or that driving is now a series of fuzzy traces which can apply themselves in different contexts. And again, those fuzzy traces, those gists, are abstractions. They don't carry the detailed content of driving experiences. And similarly with typing and any kind of learned experience, I guess. And also the abstractions that are within schema. And here I'm thinking about the image schema that Mark Johnson and other people talk about. It seems to me that image schema, like the source path goal schema, or the container schema, or the various schema to do with force, again are abstractions. They're content independent. I don't have to think about a particular journey in order to be able to understand the schematic structure of journeys having a source, having a path, and then having a goal, and then the various inferences and entailments that surround that. So I've pretty much got that. From that really I'm understanding that we can interpret experience and comprehend experience through the mobilization of these abstractions. On the other hand, however, I'm also looking at categories, and particularly the prototypical categories that Eleanor Roche, Armstrong, Lakoff, that whole set of people talk about, in which we understand experience categorially in terms of prototypes. So when I understand the concept of dog, for example, or the concept of tree, but I'll stick with dog right now, I understand the concept of dog because, according to that idea at least, there are certain prototypical dogs which I have in mind, and other perhaps less representative, less prototypical examples of the dog family would be less likely to come to mind when I think of a dog. And I know when Eleanor Roche did this, she was thinking about birds and thinking about furniture and a whole series of other categories of experience that we have, which seem to be structured in kind of radial categories around prototypical examples. And I've done some experiments with this myself with things like theatre and art, that if you show people a list of, for example, birds, sparrows, robins, penguins, emus, hawks, and so on, and ask people to rate how much they think this named entity is a bird, they will unproblematically say, oh yes, a sparrow is 10 out of 10, definitely a bird. A penguin is kind of 4 out of 10. An emu is perhaps 6 out of 10, which shouldn't make sense. I mean, there's no sense in that really. Categories, at least classic categories, are determined by necessary and sufficient conditions. So what Roche and the rest of the people I've mentioned say is that because people are unproblematically able to award kind of rankings to how well or how badly a particular entity fits within a category, that's an indicator that categories are radial, they're not bounded by necessary sufficient conditions. They're more like spider diagrams with prototypical representatives of that category placed in the center. So a typical bird is something like a robin or a sparrow. A typical piece of furniture is a chair or a table, not a chaise lounge or a footstool, and so on. So on the one hand, so the conflict I have, or the paradox I have, or the problem I'm trying to solve, is on the one hand I seem to be reading a set of ideas that suggest that categories and the comprehension of entities is formed through the recognition of relationships to prototypical examples of that category, which are non-abstract. You know, there's nothing abstract about a sparrow or a chair. But on the other hand, reading that some of our ability to comprehend the world around us is based on the construction of abstracts, like schema, like gists, like the functioning of the abstractive operator. And I haven't really found a way to meld those two ideas together yet, or haven't read the necessary pieces of literature which put those things into a similar framework. So that's what I'm trying to work out right now. Because part of my thinking keeps leading me towards one conclusion and part of it leads to the other. And at the moment I'm just getting confused, which is a shame really.